Alright friends, we've made it till the end. This is the last video for the day from me. So this is going to be talking about cell theory. So this is a PowerPoint that I linked on last time. I'm starting with that, and then I'll be ending the video by going through the guided notes, Introduction to Cell and Cell Theory, that follows along with the wacky history video that I assigned for you to watch. So please make sure that you have watched that and tried the worksheet before watching this video. This will just be to include some other information, some similar information that's already in that video, but just to say it a different way to really tell you about it. So let's get into it. I'll start off by asking the question, what are cells? Well, cells form the parts of an organism and carry out all of its functions. They are the basic units of structure and function in living things. By this I mean structure is what something is made out of and how parts are put together. So you can think of a building that's made with bricks. And by function I mean what something does or how it does it. So like a washing machine is meant to wash clothes. So when I ask you what are cells, I would like for you to respond that they are the most basic units of structure and function in living things. This is important. I'll talk a little bit about the history of cell theory that you already have watched in that video. So to reiterate, no one knew that cells existed until the 1600s because there was no way to see them. We can't see most cells with our naked eye. We need to have some sort of tool to see them. And the tool that we came up with was the microscope that was invented in about 1590. And that discovery made it possible for us to discover cells. So Anton van Leeuwenhoek was the first person to see cells under a microscope. And then over the next 200 years, scientists used microscopes to study cells. And that led to the development of the modern cell theory. So Robert Hooke, you'll be reading a little bit about him in your next activity. He is the person who ultimately named the cell. So he looked at a piece of cork underneath a microscope and drew pictures of what he saw. So when he was drawing them, they looked like a bunch of little squares right next to each other. I'll show you some samples in class at some point. But they reminded him of the rooms that monks would live in monasteries that are called cells, and so he named them cells. And then many scientists, because I mentioned that over those 200 years there were a lot of scientists that were looking through microscopes and coming up with discoveries, and all of these got put together to create the modern cell theory. So here is the cell theory, and this is definitely something that is on your worksheet that we'll talk about after we're done with this PowerPoint. But the first tenet is, all living things are composed of cells, so you have to be made of cells to be considered living. Second, cells are the basic units of structure and function in living things, and we already talked about what that meant on the second slide. And then third, all cells are produced from other cells. You can't just get a cell from nowhere. It has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is another cell. Okay? That is all that I have for you in this PowerPoint presentation. And then now we'll be moving over to the guided notes worksheet. So please make sure that you have that up and that it's filled out, that you have watched that wacky history video and tried your best to fill that out. All right, see you in a second. Okay, I am back here now with the worksheet pulled up, so make sure that you have this up on your end, either on your computer or print it out in person if you were somebody that printed it out. Let's just go through these together. So you should be checking your answers at this point, not writing down your answers as I go through them. So number one, the body is made up of about 37 trillion cells. That's so many, isn't it? About 37 trillion. Then here, there's a scientist who published Micrographia in 1665 that showed his drawings of objects under his microscope. This person was Robert Hooke, that we just talked about a second ago in the PowerPoint. And because we just talked about him, we know that he is the person who came up with the term cells. He specifically looked at dead cells, so that's why they looked empty. So they looked like a bunch of little squares, pretty much like this is what he would have been drawing. They just looked like a bunch of little rooms, like little cells. He thought that they were empty because he was looking at ones that were dead. But Anton von Leeuwenhoek looked at live ones, such as protists and sperm, and he also had better lenses so he could make a more powerful microscope. So he called these animalcules. However, we already know which term is the one that ended up being more popularly used today. And like we said before, many scientists helped come up with the modern cell theory, but two scientists that were particularly helpful were Schleiden and Schwann. And there was more information about them in the video, the Wacky History one. I just want you to be familiar with these different scientists' names because they were important. Okay, now let's go ahead and write down the cell theory. Okay, so the cell theory states that all living things are composed of one or more cells. Second, a cell is the most basic unit of life, and that all cells come from other cells. Okay, these are important to know, so I'm going to make a star here and say important to know. I will ask about these when I see you. And if you are having a little bit of trouble with memorizing these three parts of the cell theory, I recommend going back to the list of videos that I gave you and watching the last one. It's a song where they sing these three things over and over again, so you will get that beat stuck in your head, and then you will never forget what cell theory states. Okay? So the third part of the cell theory came up by Mach, who was plagiarized by Virchow. Alright, and then that led us to this question to answer after video. What are cells? Well, we just talked about this in the PowerPoint that I showed at the beginning of this video. So cells are the most basic unit of structure and function for life. Okay. So at this point, including this and other videos, you should be able to, 1, name the 8 characteristics of life, decide if something is biotic, if something is biotic or abiotic, and tell me how, right? Tell me that to be biotic you have to meet all 8 characteristics of life, and you should be able to name the 3 parts of cell theory. Next, you are going to be reading, so here, let's do, you're going to be doing a reading over Robert Hooke. have that completed by next time, I will ask about it. Then you'll be doing a reading over viruses to decide, are they living, are they not? And this is going to be set up as a CERA claim evidence reasoning. So it's going to step you through questions to decide whether you believe that viruses are living or not. And then last is going to be a video and reflection over viruses. There is going to be a class discussion. So make sure that you finish all of these things before next class, because I will be asking about all of them. You are responsible for learning all of those things, and I will be checking in with you, making sure that we are all on the same page next time I see you. I hope to be back in school by Friday. If all goes well, I will be there. All right, that's all for me for now. I will see you when I see you. Bye.